What the? Why am I zoomed in so much? I got answers. I think I'm gonna do old-fashioned kit bash painting. Painting kit bash. See where it goes. Now let's get some color in here. Don't pick red. I always pick red. It's because red's always selected. Why is that the case? Oh yeah, look at that. If you press D, it goes to red. Yeah, okay. I hear someone gonna ask a question.
Do you usually have an idea when you start like a spit paint, or?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I usually feel like I waste a lot of time trying to think of something before I start.
Yeah, so there always needs to be some sort of context to everything and all things. This is the way I like to think. Okay. And so for me, it's important that you have that context. Okay. So if I am doing a painting like that you're seeing me doing right now, okay.
Yep.
The goal isn't to have an idea and then finish it. The goal here is to just practice painting. And so having something in my mind is not important. I'm not trying to be a good idea maker.
Okay.
You know?
Yep.
You know how I was talking with Yannick earlier about how he needs to take a step back, right? The reason for stepping back is so you can reassess why you were doing that in the first place. You know what I mean? And when you start to think this way, right? You start to just do something that I think a lot of people, and don't be mistaken. This is like everybody, like all people make this mistake, including me. And I feel that I've gotten better at this, meaning I've tried to prevent myself from thinking this way. You know, that all people, they just do not like to admit that they are wrong. Okay.
Oh yeah.
People just don't like to look stupid. And the irony is that that entails them actually ultimately looking stupid. Right?
Yep, for sure.
Think about like our president. He's genuinely an imbecile. I think he's for real stupid. And I don't think that's a problem, by the way. I think you're allowed to be dumb. Okay? Like, I think people are allowed to not be smart or have like a lack of intelligence. In fact, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think that's also something that you can get out of. You just got to recognize that that's the reality, right?
Right.
I don't think it's good though to have that person in charge of really important things. You know, like I wouldn't want some homeless guy off the street, as sad as I feel for that person in his circumstances, to be my heart surgeon. He didn't go to 12 years of medical school and, actually take people's hearts out, He's not medically intelligent. There's nothing wrong with claiming that. And so you take him, for example, he literally, like a few weeks ago, not even, I don't think, said, "It's not a big deal. It's gonna get over. It's gonna be like a miracle."
It's gonna come and go with spring.
Yeah, when the weather comes and it's gonna go. And now he's like, "We're in a state of emergency."
Yeah.
Like in a matter of weeks. See, now he looks like an idiot. This is what I'm saying. If he would have just said, "I don't know, this is crazy bad potentially, but we shouldn't panic. we're going to get the best people on top of this, right? We're going to look at the bottom of this. For now, we're going to put on like broadcast via text, because I know the government can text you now, because I got that text. He tweeted and we
Huh.
all got it. Okay. He uses that for good and be like, hey, this is the information. This is the latest data. This is the growth rate. There's a guy on Joe Rogan. He was like, that's his job, is like viral diseases. And he was talking about how you think telling people make people freak out. He's like, not telling people makes people freak out.
Mm.
He's like, you tell people exactly what's going on and why it's a problem and why people should take it seriously. People are actually going to respond more well. Like if you say, hey, this is the disease, this is what's going on, this is how many people died, this is how many people will die, you know, if we don't do these specific measures. You give them a plan, you know?
Yeah.
And they say, work together, let's communicate well, let's help each other, you know, get through this. But not sugarcoating it, you know? I mean, if you really think about it, that's kind of what I do for you guys, right? Like I don't necessarily sugarcoat it, but I give you a plan of action, right? A strategy
Right.
to then fix the problem that you have. So going back to ultimately getting off of Trump for a second, like this whole idea that I'm making is that this is not just him. Like everybody's like this. I'm picking on him because he's the easiest target. But like,
Can't admit that he's wrong.
yeah, but we're all like this. It's not like I'm immune to this too. I've done this too, you know, where I have claimed something and I was so confident about it and I would preach it to the world and then ultimately find out that I was wrong. Now, this is the measure, this is the measure of growth, is when that does happen, to then admit, to take responsibility of being wrong. Because there is absolutely nothing wrong with admitting that you're wrong. It demonstrates a growth of character, you know? Now,
Yeah.
obviously, this is not true for all things. There's some things, if you do it wrong once, it's pretty bad, like murder. Okay. But even then, admitting that you have done something wrong can still have real positive results. There was a guy who murdered um, this mother's poor daughter,
Mm.
and it was a gruesome murder. It wasn't like anything like, um, it was pretty bad. Like it was like a rape, like tied her up. It was bad. And this
Oh.
guy apologized for it many years after him being, you know, sentenced to jail and living and being in jail. And he said that like it like haunts him what he did and how it really destroyed his life, knowing that he destroyed many others and in a real way. And the mother actually ultimately forgave him, you know, and she was better than someone like me, but she forgave him, you know, and they were able to move on, and she was able to move on, and it ultimately led to a good outcome. And then she talks to him regularly, right? And
Huh.
she's using her grief to try to make him better, you know. And she talks to him and she tries to help him get over it, because she has the empathy to understand that he was going through something crazy. He was being crazy and he did something really stupid that ultimately murdered the most important person in their life. Now, I'm not saying that you guys should always forgive murderers. I'm just using that as an example of like, even when you take something as crazy as murder, and this person admitted that it was bad, and he definitely showed some real remorse, you know, that the effect that it had on the people who were grieving. There was the same thing that happened with somebody who got shot and murdered. It was like a cop went into someone's house and murdered some guy because she thought she was in her apartment, and then the
Huh.
family, specifically the brother, forgave her. You know, but I think they try to lighten her sentences. Like, well, that's something I don't agree with. She fucking, we got to like let people know, like, don't be just shooting people,
Yeah.
even though she genuinely, and I really believe this, didn't mean to. But we can't just let that slide. We got to like put a real strict guideline of like, if you're gonna shoot somebody, you better be damn sure, you know?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, getting back to the point, people don't do this, right? And it's because they don't take steps back, because they don't take a moment to just reflect, um, they tend to not know what's wrong with them, right? It's a really bad position to be in. So when you ask me, like, do I think about what I'm painting? I'm like, no, because the agenda here is not to, okay? I'm trying to just let my brain guide me with all that I've learned over the years and see where it takes me. And what's great is that it will give me new tools to improve, right? And so that will allow me to kind of be more focused on immediate problem solving in the future, right?
Yeah.
Um, but this is not the problem I'm solving. I'm not trying to solve this specific problem of thinking and designing. I'm solving the problem of just automatic painting. Okay. And so this will allow me to kind of catch mistakes specifically in that context, admitting to myself that this is what I'm focused on. Because then if I go and, let's say, try to um, design, right, and actually think about it and try to approach the same way that you just saw me do it right there, like really sporadic, and then all of a sudden it's like weird and it's like really off subject and nothing's really coming together. This is a great opportunity to be like, well, this is wrong. I am wrong to think that this is the right strategy for this specific idea or this specific approach. It's the ability to step back and just admit to yourself that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like I said, nobody likes to do that. Nobody likes to admit, you know?
Yep.
And so I say, I'm a big fan of context, huge fan of context. Okay. Because it prevents you from
Right.
looking stupid. Okay. You can't avoid it. You're always going to have something that's going to make you look stupid. But if you are always thinking in context and nuance, you're going to prevent yourself. Right. So if I'm trying to practice idea generation, right, this is how what I've learned is the best way to practice that. Like if I actually want to get better at creating ideas, is gathering reference, right? Tons of reference, looking at that reference and seeing what I like about it. And then doing studies from that reference, meaning I can draw those shapes and understand those ideas and those concepts, right?
Yeah.
And then attempt to draw with some of my intuition in mind. And letting most of my intuition guide like some of the fundamental stuff like painting, fun like shape design, stuff that's like transcends the genre, right?
Right.
But have my mind only focus on the idea. And I don't care how I come up with ideas, as long as I come up with ideas with two things being true. I'm doing it quickly and I'm doing it clearly, meaning that when I show it to somebody else, they know what I'm showing them, right? Like it's like if you were to write like yourself like this whole equation and math stuff, you have this whole board of just, nobody can understand that, even though it's like just kind of a theory. You want to kind of be very clear and concise. That's why using like diagrams and pictures, you know, explaining things, you know,
Yeah.
and then get into the math of it. Like, right. Like that's kind of a abstract idea of what I'm talking about. Like I try to present a presentable idea that anybody can look at it and get it, not just other artists. And that's really
Yeah.
important. And so I study however I can, um, to get ideas out of the way. Like I try to study basically with tools to help me create things faster. Right. So like for instance, let me show you real quick. I don't get too deviated. So I spent like a whole week and a half like really learning Blender, you know?
Yep.
And I love Blender. I think Blender is great. Right. So then so for me, when I was creating stuff, I'm just doing something like this. Like I learned how to do that. Like, all right. All right. Z, there you go. And then what I also learned was I can do something cool like this. And this was watching, actually, you know what? It might be better if I made a spear. Okay. So, add a modifier. Actually, this is the one I want to add a modifier. I want to add a Boolean modifier. And I'm going to pick this. So wherever this goes, it's going to be cutting away, right? Like that object, it's cutting it. You understand? And then so with this one, I would do like a displace modifier. And then I would just add like a texture. And then I'll just use a Musgrave and essentially just create like this kind of rock texture. And I saw this from a tutorial online and I was like, clever. And that's fine. That's all I needed. So now I can go over here and let's see, like scale it up. Right? Create that. Go back to this, go to this modifier and then just apply. And then you can see now it's created nice little chunks that feel nice and organic. And then you can go over here and do it again. Right? You can just create another Boolean. Pick that, and it's doing it now again. You can apply. Right? And then maybe for this one, since this is, you want to kind of create a situation where it's not completely cutting all the way through. But again, you just keep, like I was doing this, so I'm starting to think, okay, I need to kind of create a hotkey that will allow me to just put these modifiers in quickly. And obviously I can hide this for now. And then I can do something like this. And this is what I was talking about, the particle system, and this is something that I want to start practicing. But I even found that you can do something cool like this, where you can go to object, transform, randomize, transform, and then you can like randomize their location. So I'm like, okay, so that's something to think about, And then like, let's do plane. Right. And then I can just look at this and create, like a miniature environment. Right. Just like real fast. And the point I'm making is, now I'm first person view, like, oh, cool, walking around, and I'm doing,
yeah, that's cool.
I'm learning this and see, like, I'm learning all this stuff so that you saw what I was doing, right? I did all this kind of quick things, like whether you knew how to do that or not, it's irrelevant. The principal point I'm trying to make is that I did learn all that stuff so that way I can be creative, like just create things fast, But the point is it clear? Like, can I look at this and get the point across to somebody else?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing I'm working on right now, like expanding my visual library so that like my thumbnails, like you've been talking about, there's more clarity to the ideas and I can get the point across faster. Doing like, like you were saying, I want to do more studies from my reference after I gather them before I ever start drawing. So yeah, I'm definitely working on all that.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I want to make is that, like, I'm not thinking of anything just because it's not that I don't think thinking about stuff is important. It's just not fast.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're constantly thinking about every little thing that you're doing, you are slowing down. And I always like to use the running example, right? I'm sure you've heard me use this many times. Like, or walking example, like, you know, when you walk, you don't think about every step you take, you just do it. Imagine like
Mm.
if you're doing a marathon and you had to think about every step that you take versus on like focusing on the more important stuff like keeping pace, you know, keeping your energy levels at a moderate, you know, level, you know, stuff that are going to make you a better marathon runner. If you're
Yeah.
always thinking about how your lines are drawing, if your forms are good, if your perspective is accurate, these types of things, you know, which are all important, and you should get those things right, especially if you're trying to go to a pro level, you know, that's obviously going to slow you down, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For
right
me, the
here,
big thing. Oh,
so right here, you can see I'm just experimenting, like I'm just trying stuff. This image has no intention. I'm not trying to make a very specific image. I'm just seeing what happens if I just make this brush color dodge like right now. You know? Oh man, this is working. Oh man, it's not working. You know, I find that out in this space and then I just try to work it and fix it. And then one day I'm asked to draw some sort of illustration, let's say, and I'll remember what I did here. And I was like, you know what? This will be a great tool for this specific situation, the context. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I've done this for so many years now. There's a reason why I have like a really good proficiency with many different styles and aesthetics. It's like very, very intentional. Anyway, go ahead. What you're saying?
um, yeah, just like on not getting caught up in certain elements just so you can focus on the idea. Like, you know, for me, the big thing is anatomy. Like right now, for a good chunk of time every day, I'm looking, like scouring Pinterest or whatever for a couple different poses and drawing them multiple times and then trying to redraw them from memory. Um, so just trying to do that so that, you know, I don't have to think too much about the anatomy in the future when I'm sketching out my characters.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, I'm all about like experimenting and testing stuff out all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great strategy in general. Look at that. Looky. Pin light, huh? Interesting. This can actually be a really good solve for some environment stuff that I considered doing.
Getting kind of a camo
Interesting.
vibe from that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Pin light. Anyway, hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, like with 3D especially, I've just been learning lots of fundamental stuff. I did the same programming when I was learning programming. I spend a lot of time just understanding like how the core of program, like what is important, which is great because you know I haven't programmed in a while, but like in some of the stuff that I've been doing recently for my work, there were some technical questions and limitations that people were talking about, and I was just kind of like, no, why can't you just do this? And people were like, what? Oh yeah, that is a good solution. But I because I have like a larger context, I understand. Like I'm not a concept artist. I'm like pseudo tech artist, you know, and
Right.
that just happens to be really good at painting, you know. Where most tech artists, they're pretty good. They're like really good generalists. Like they're not great artists and they're not great engineers, but they're just like really good at both of those things at the same time. You know, they're really good at making like shaders and um, tools for artists. You know, it's like they bridge the gap.
Yeah.
But they, you know, they maybe not know how to paint or maybe not know how to draw. They just use technical skills to be able to create these things, right? And where I'm like, I think I'm like a junior level tech artist, and that brings a lot of value because I'm not just concepting things that I think um, could be cool. I'm doing stuff that I know will be cool, and I have like or I know that could be cool, but also know how to make them work and be cool, which a lot of tech artists just wouldn't be able to do. I have exponential value. Yeah, I was learning how to make like lava shader. I made one. Watched this
Lava shade.
like a lava shader, and I learned how to do it in like 4 minutes. It's all one tutorial, and I understand everything.
Hmm.
I understand exactly what he was doing, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go make my own right now, following his instruction. Like back in Blender. See if I can do it in less than a minute. All right, so we got this. Let's just do a sphere. All right, let's pop this open. Let's do this. Oops, wrong one. Let's bring this into that. Actually, let's just go into the shaded environment. Smooth shape. Let's add new material, dude. Bam. Anyways, while I'm doing this, anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah. So I know you've been doing a lot of environments
I have.
recently. Do you have any like go-to artists you like to look at that you haven't already talked about?
Yeah, if you want to know what that is, just go to my ArtStation or Pinterest and you'll see.
Okay.
Just go to my likes and you'll see. Especially now, I've like gathered a ton of folks, and yeah, it's crazy how many great artists. But I will say that I found that there's very few who I honestly think um, there's very few that I find are like unique.
Hmm.
And this is not necessarily a bad thing. This has been true even for concept artists, character concept artists. So, you know, I think like people in general just like emulate whoever's like the better artists. This is how it is. But with characters, for whatever reason, and I haven't thought about this for too long, so I don't really have a solid answer right away. But for whatever reason, um, concept artists, character concept artists, um, there's so much more variety, and it could be because I live in that world. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I'm used to it. Like I'm used to seeing it. It could be just an experience thing, but I think that's not fair to say either because I've been doing this for quite a while. You know what I mean? Like I'm not just like I've only. It's not like I only looked at character concept art. I looked at all sorts of artists of all sorts of breeds. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Including environment and mech, because as you might suspect, like I am a fan um, of just art. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so clearly, I'm looking at like whomever and whatever. Um, yeah, this is fine. Let's do this. Let's add this again. See what that does for us. Oh yeah, I made the sun. Yeah, we'll stop right there. You guys get the idea. Like, I get it, man. Like, I know how this works. You know, I know what's going on here, right? I know what this will do. This will adjust the lava to magma, like the boiling magma part of it versus the more dried, or not dried, but like the lower heat. It's still fucking hot. You can't really just touch it, but it's getting closer to something we could touch. You know, I understand what that does. It's a color ramp. It's basically creating a mask. It's using this noise to create a mask, and that mask is separating this color from the emission, which is like the white, which is the orange stuff, right? So if I want to change this to a different color, that's what I would do here. You know?
And is that just comes with Blender normally, or is that like a plugin you had?
This is just Blender 2.8, bro. And it's cool. And so what this does is just make it so these two things make it so that if I have like another object, I gotta make sure on that end. Yeah. If I like let's say make a plane, right, and then I just attach this material onto that plane, and bam, right? So now I have it there. But here's the cool thing. Oh, this is pretty heavy, especially if you use procedural stuff. It gets pretty heavy, but you can do something like that. You know, then bam, got lava. Lava. You know, just using noise. It's no plug-in or nothing. You know, it's pretty cool. I could do this for a couple other stuff too. I'm pretty savvy, specifically because I messed with Unreal a lot. Unreal has very similar material editor. It's just a different language, but the same philosophy is still there. Instead of using color ramps, you can just use I think they call it, I forget what they call it. It's lerps. It's the same idea. It's a linear interpolate is the actual term, if you're curious. But you don't need to know that. I'm just flexing on you guys that I know that. But like, if you want to get really good, you should know that, because so then when you are Google searching, you're wiser, right? You're searching for like accurate terms. Like you type in, what is Blender's version of linear interpolation? Right? And then they be like, oh, color ramp. That's a good one. You know? What is their alpha? They call it factor. In coding, like you'll see something like functions versus methods, but they're essentially the same thing, but different languages call them different things. You know, like C++ calls it a method, and they also is in the guise of a void. You have to type in void, which I still don't understand, but that's what you just got to do. Where in JavaScript, you have to type in function. And again, you don't need to know what that is. I'm just explaining that if you have terminology, it's easier to search what you need to learn, you know? Same is true with art, right? Like if you don't know about like chiaroscuro, right, which is like my favorite painting method, is like light versus dark, then you're not going to be able to find other artists that really master that. So there's some value to like understanding that. If you don't know where the humerus is, like you need to learn what the humerus is and what it does, so that you can search easier, right? I think starting with broad searches works too, but eventually they should hopefully lead to more specific searches, you know. But it's exponential. You'll see, like you'll just start to go down the right rabbit holes more and more the more you research, the more you study. If you watch enough tutorials too, like some artist will mention something that you never heard before, right? And then you're just like, what does that mean? And then you just start going down that rabbit hole, man, and start learning some new stuff.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
What was something that you wish you knew before you went into a studio job, or like maybe before you started your freelance career?
My answer to that type of question is nothing. The reason why is because I learned a lot from the mistakes I've made, you know? And it's hard to say that I'd be the same artist I am today if I didn't make those mistakes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so for you guys, it's easy. I'm going to give you a direct answer to that question. What you should think about, right? So that you make your own mistakes moving forward, right? But I don't think I would have done anything differently, right? Because there's very specific reasons that that stuff happened that makes me who I am today. Okay. Now, with that being said, what you should consider, I'll talk about that, right? Because I have already made those mistakes. Okay. And so you should try to avoid these mistakes. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, if you don't trust me on that, you're going to learn it the hard way anyway. Okay. All right. First one is the grass is always greener problem. Have you ever heard of this expression?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what is your perception of the grass is always greener? What does that mean to you? So just make sure we're on this.
Not realizing, like, always thinking that everybody else has it better than you.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. Now we can stop it right there. Yes. So once I get a job, then things will start to get, and then I'm going to start working out, eat better, or I'm going to start doing personal work. You know, I just got to take care of these bills and all, right? Like you get a studio job, you start doing none of that. Okay. In fact, the opposite happens. You become more and more focused on work. You almost can't leave, right? And then you work there and you start to feel resentment for your work because you realize you're working so much, you're spending so much time away from friends and family, the things you were able to do before, you're not doing anymore, right? Grass is always greener, right? So then you start thinking, well, I need to just get a better job, or I need to get paid more. Yeah?
Definitely.
And then that happens. You start getting paid more, right? You start feeling vindicated in terms of your quality of work. But bad habits haven't changed. You see what I'm saying? And then now you have something what they call lifestyle inflation. So instead of spending, let's say, $50 on like sneakers and shit, you know, you're spending $500 on like, I don't know, like a new exercise bike or something that you never use.
Peloton.
Yeah. You get my point, kind of where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
You think, okay, well, when I start working at this studio, it's going to be great. And at first it is. Everyone's on their best behavior, the honeymoon phase. And at some point that goes away too. And then you're like, well, I'm going to work on this. And then you just keep happening. It just keeps happening. Now, I'm saying this not because I fell into this trap entirely. I think in terms of working at studios, I've always loved most of the studios I've worked at. There's only like one studio or one project that I really genuinely did not like, and it was the Monster Truck movie. Okay? Generally did not like that. But outside of that, I liked most of the jobs I've done, you know? But where I did fall into the trap of was thinking like my life would get better because I had external problems. I still do, man. There's lots of things that still bother me, you know? But I've come to realize I just need to stop that, you know? Nothing's going to be fixed immediately. I just got to build a strong plan in the long term and just kind of stick with that. Right? Just stick with long-term strategies versus short-term solutions, you know? I think everybody can relate to this. I teach it. I've seen it happen with my own work. I need to be more practical with it. It's just the reality of it, you know? And so that would be my first thing to say is the grass is always greener. People always think, oh, once this happens and things will get better. Don't worry. Like things do generally get better. But if you think it's going to solve some of these fundamental flaws in your personality, it's not. In fact, it might enable some of the bad habits, right? More. Okay. So if you have bad habits that you don't like, or you have things in your life that are really problematic, my advice is actually try to fix that now. Don't wait till you have a job. If getting a job is part of that solution, that's great. But like, know that the job is not going to fix all of it. There's a reason why you may have been in these problems in the first place. that has nothing to do with money, and you have to think about if that's true or not, right? Some stuff is definitely money, like if you can't pay your bills and that's super stressful, that's different, right? But it's like if you feel like artistically you're not moving, it's because you're not working or people aren't paying you. That doesn't change if you get a job, you know? Like you'll do better, you'll be more accountable because you have to, but you'll build resentment because you're not used to it. And then you start blaming other people for your shortcomings versus just accepting that you don't know, right? Like I was talking about earlier, and just started becoming more self-accountable. And I learned that from watching my peers. I see a lot of my peers would complain about the studio, like, oh, Blizzard doesn't do this, or Riot doesn't do that, or Sony Santa Monica. Like they're always something about the studio is the reason why I'm not doing the things I love. You know, I think that's a dangerous place to put yourself in. You don't want to rely on this narrative that it's all these external factors that's stopping you. You want to kind of just be more progressive than that. You want to kind of think, no, like what is it that I'm doing currently that could help eliminate some of these bad habits, you know? So that would be my large scope, like if I could give myself advice type of thing. But like I said, I wouldn't because me putting my hand on the burner, right, is the reason why I made moves. I think if people told me, especially back then, I probably wouldn't have listened as well. You know what I mean? Versus like actually experiencing. You there's something about like experiencing it that you learn like exponentially, and you grab like a profound appreciation for it. You know what I mean? And one more thing that I probably would add to that, like to what could I've told the past self of me, like what I could have done better, or something that could have been nice, is the power of just patience. I already consider myself pretty patient, right? But just the power of it, you know, like really like being vindicated and really being able to convince my past self that this is all you need to think about. Like patience. For some of you guys, it could be a combination of patience and discipline / resilience, like being okay with that you're shitty at sometimes, you know? I never really had that problem. So I don't think the resilience part needed to be taught. I've always felt pretty resilient, you know? I think it's in practice. Like I've seen myself overcome it even as in youth, you know? And so I think it's just my default stance is to just be okay with sucking at stuff, where I know a lot of people don't feel this way, right? But I know patience is something that might have not been something I took very seriously in my youth, and especially in the beginning of my career. But now I know, like having hindsight, looking at it in the grand scheme of things, patience, resilience is pretty powerful. It's the one thing nobody wants to do, especially us Americans. We don't want to be patient. Like I was talking about how waiting in line, right? Like I was okay with it, right? I was like, as long as I get in there and get some food, it should be all right. And if I can't, it's all right because I already bought a good amount of food for me and my family for a month, you know? I'm not too worried about it, you know?
Was there a line because they were just allowing a limited amount of people in the store?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for everybody's safety. People got to realize that.
Yeah, I approve of it. Yeah, like I think it's smart. They should have done this from the start.
Yeah.
This is what I was talking about, like having a stronger social system, you know, where people just understand, like, don't buy literally like the whole toilet aisle, you know? Like, I think if everybody just bought one bag of toilet paper, it still would have been low capacity, right? It was the fact that people were buying like 5 or 6 that it just sold out. Like, if you just have 10 people do that, then all of them are gone, dude. You know? And it's people also forget that maybe there's a problem of like everybody just happens to just didn't buy toilet paper. I think if you have one person out of 100 people buy toilet paper, it's also going to happen. So it might have not been prevented even with waiting, you know? Could just be a simple number game. There's just a lot of people. I just don't understand why toilet paper. I'm still kind of shaking or scratching my head on that one.
Yeah, I'm still on the theory that it was a mistake. Somebody just
There's somebody just said it, and then everyone's like, "What? Oh no!" But what I would say that is that like in general, though, what I'm trying to get at is like patience is pretty powerful. That would be another one, and that goes really well with both the. That goes really well with the working freelance and working in studio, having this philosophy. Yeah, being grass is always greener. Just keep that in mind, and then being patient with what you want out of your life and changing those habits now, not later.
Sounds good.
It's hard, dude. Don't worry. Like, you're not alone. It's a challenge. All the stuff that I taught you guys though in class, you know what I mean? Those are still true. Like clear designs, being really refined towards the end. Like these things holds true ultimately. Okay.
Are we gonna still have access to the Dropbox file for a little while before? Or...
Actually, I'll send it to you guys once it's all said and done in the Skype chat, and then you guys just download it. And if you save that link, you should be there forever. The only reason why it might be gone, if you go check, let's say in the future, is because I moved it to a different location. But I'll have it. You just have to ask for it.
And what about the graphic, the concept, the character design page on your website?
Yeah, you guys will have actually access to that for like a while. I don't really let people. I don't really change passwords that often. One time, a student was like, "Hey, man, like I've been sneaking into the mentorships and watching like other people's mentorships and stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. I don't really care." Because the reality is that the value of the mentorship isn't just to be able to watch that stuff, right? It's the value of like me actually talking specifically to you, right, and telling you what you need to improve upon. I think there's still obviously value to watch it again, like what other people are going through, but it's really more the same stuff, right? The biggest value of taking mentorships multiple times for me is that I build a better reputation with what you're up to. I'm sure you've noticed that I talk differently to certain students, like Michael, for instance, because he's been taking my class periodically. So I talk to him much differently. Like I think we had like a really firm discussion in the very beginning of the class, right? Where I didn't really do that with any of you guys because that's a different circumstance, right? And so the value of taking class multiple times is that I just know who you are, and so I can be a little bit more firm if I feel like it has to happen, right? Or I can like streamline what work you should be working on so that we can get you more portfolio pieces. But the value of the class is always and will always be my specific feedback to you. But you'll have access to all that stuff. And if you want to watch even other people in the future, you guys are probably going to be able to do so. At some point, that will stop. I do change passwords. And I don't necessarily advertise this either. Just some people realize that that's happened. And they're just like, oh, no, I'm going to tell them. But one student confessed to me. He felt so bad. And I was like, no, I don't really care. Like, you think that I didn't know that? Like, I know that you guys can do that. And I kind of am okay with that.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Yep. You guys, you guys spent a good amount of money to take my course. I want you guys to feel like everything you learned was really valuable. And even outside of that, there's a lot of value.
I had a question real quick.
All right.
Could you just do like a quick demo of the mixer brush? Because that's always been an enigma for me. I just don't understand how it works.
Sure. Do it. So I'm going to do a little bit of both teaching you how to fish and then giving you a fish.
Okay.
So the giving you the fish is just the mixer brush. So I'll be honest, I don't really understand 100% how it works either. But how I've made it work for me is by effing with it So if I were to now think about what the mixer brush is doing, it takes those pixels and it just stamps it again and again, but it kind of, based off of the algorithm, it'll take like the average colors that are nearby and just keep doing that, keep sampling it. You see that?
Yes.
Where the smudge tool will just kind of blur, like we'll smudge. It'll just smudge those pixels, will blur those pixels. Where the mixer tool will actually try to like paint whatever brush you have and just average it out. It also is blurring, but it's just doing it in a more fancy way. And then you can have different results with different brush types. Okay. And this one right here is even better than the smudge tool when it comes to like blending that I found. Or sorry, the smudge tool, the smudge tool. Sorry. I don't know why I was thinking it was a different brush. Yeah, this does a really good job of blending than this does. This mixer brush, because it's averaging in a more practical way. But the way that I would F with it is just this. I'll just, you can start with whatever brush and then see what it does. See, so I started here and it basically dries out. See how it just dried out and I can't do it anymore? I have to pick it up again.
Yes.
Right, so this can actually be less of a mixing brush. It's more of like a paintbrush that just feels like it dries out. But it doesn't even really mix. So if you color pick, see it's just a brush that picks multiple colors. See that? Like the brush itself has colors on it.
Mhm.
That's not just like one color. It's like that whole, it's like sampling that whole area. You see that? Like I was talking about?
Yeah.
And it just runs with it. See what dry light load does. Color pick here. So it just dries much faster. Heavy load, this might go longer or forever. So the dry is somewhere in between. Yeah, this just goes forever. Test this theory out. So I should be able to, let's make a different brush. Let's get rid of scatter all these settings. And let's change the spacing and see what we're seeing. See what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially just made that image a brush, right? Because if you look at it, it's not like it's smudged or anything. It's keeping all of whatever is sampled. Okay, so then if you go to like moist, well, let's go here. Let's go to moist, see what that does. So essentially, this is what you should do. You should just go through the defaults, see what's happening, right?
Okay.
And then just kind of determine what that means, right? So this is me teaching you how to fish. And obviously you could see some case scenarios like this actually is not a bad strategy for maybe creating chrome real quick, right? And that's the wet heavy mix. So then when I go to like the custom settings, it's the brush that I've made, right? And all this is, why it becomes custom is because I just F with all this stuff. I go here and say, what does wet do? You know?
Yes.
And this essentially is resampling as it goes, right? It's taking the most recent sample and that's my new color and it just keeps doing it. That's what makes it feel like it's smudging, right? But it's just happening rapidly. And we can try to test that theory. Let's go here. I should probably increase the spacing. So without any adjustments of any kind, it seems like it's not doing that at all, right? It still seems like it's just a brush. So there must be some transfer that's needed. See how that works. And it seems like if we put it closer together, it might yield a different result? Yeah, I guess not. Let's see. But that's what I'm saying. You just keep, oh, this is very wet though. Yeah, I think it still tries to average around that value range. But I'll just keep effing with it and see what's up. That's how I like discover how brushes work. So that's just general advice, as well as understanding at a fundamental level what the mixer brush is doing. But like I said, I'm not like an expert. I don't really know a million percent. I haven't found too many real reasons that I should use the mixer brush.
Okay.
And the only reason why I do use it when I do use it is because it just creates like a more abstraction that I can try to work around, you know? And it does make it feel a little painterly when you do stuff like this, like just on the fringes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so these are the reasons why I use it. But in terms of blending, I usually still just hand blend, you know, and I'm a big fan of just like knowing how to fix your painting without any kind of special treatment. Right. I try not to like rely on some special tools. Like I got hard ops for a blender and I turned it off, even though it's super freaking amazing, because I want to have fundamental knowledge of Blender. Right. I want to be like a Blender master at vanilla, because then when I start adding these extra features and these extra tools, which I highly recommend you still probably use hard ops because it's freaking amazing. But it's like in my experience of learning how to get good at stuff, fundamentals always are valuable. And nobody wants to do it. Everyone's going to just use box cutter right out of the gate. You know what I mean? And they're going to get real used to it. And then when they want to solve a very unique problem that box cutter just can't do, right? They're going to be stuck. Make sense?
Yeah. Don't rely on crutches.
Yeah, like box cutter and mixer brush or whatever tools that are available that are freaking amazing. Absolutely, they're amazing. But yeah, don't be so caught up into the tool that you all of a sudden have a dependency for it. I've seen it so many times in my industry, like amongst my peers, where they're like especially when we do demos like around the world, and I'll set up my station. I just like, oh, they don't have Photoshop brushes. All right, I'll just make my own. Like they didn't have it installed, or I'll just use the round brush. I'll just paint, you know, this, you know. Oh, they have an iPad. Okay, I'll just do that. Oh, they only have drawing. Okay, I'll just do it. Like I'm like really, I can just adapt. It's fine, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If given the choice for my optimal workstation, I'm going to set it up my optimal way, but I don't need to, you know. I'm not relying on it. Where I would see like my friends who have demos like, oh my God, this is not working. And they're like freaking out. You know, they're like, oh, this is off. Like, oh, then this is not working. The switch is off. Like, fuck. You know, they start freaking the hell out. And then their demo like constantly malfunctions. And this is like, it's a mess. Usually it's still fine because they're still most of the time at a high level. I'm just saying like, I don't really deal with that anymore because I've just be situational. Like I don't want to like go to do a blender demo, for instance, and not have box cutter and then be like, uh-oh. You know, like I wouldn't want to. I want to still be able to be like high functioning like modeler without any of that, right? Am I good at vanilla versions of the tools? And even outside of that, like can I still do something cool without my digital tools? Like my tool sets have shrinked, the ones that I absolutely need. Like I can use even paper and pencil to do good designs. You know,
Yeah.
I don't need Photoshop. And I've done it. I've designed just using paper, pencil, and pen and markers, just fine, professionally. It was usually a rare occurrence, like a special situation, but I did it, and the client was fine with it.
What was the situation that you had to do that?
Computer just took a shit.
Oh shoot.
A lot of people who that happens to, they'll be like, especially my students, they're like, I couldn't do anything. What do you mean? You couldn't get a paper and pencil, dude? And they're like, oh yeah, that's right. I was like, you just be creative. I had one student where they couldn't get like a 3D program working. And I was like, well, then, just get some Play-Doh. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, like Play-Doh. And then like I've done it before. I've like got Play-Doh. I made like a little tiny sculpt because you can't do it too big, right?
Yeah.
And then I get a little flashlight, and that's my lighting. And I just take a picture of it. No, I'm serious. I've done that, and it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun to do it that way.
Yeah, no, that's sick.
Legos, that's a really good thing to try to do. Legos a little bit harder because that still costs a lot more money.
Oh my god, those things are so expensive.
But there are like cool Lego mods, you know what I mean? Like there's just solutions, dude. Like that's what I'm saying. Like be a solution oriented individual. Don't try to make more problems, try to solve the problems. I agree that it would have been better to have your ZBrush, but why not? And it's funny because he ended up getting clay and he did all this like these really cool sculpts and lighting them and painting over them, and it turned out all right. I was like, why do you have to use ZBrush? You don't have to. It is so much easier, right, to jump right in and make things. Yeah, of course, but you don't have to. And I showed him like people like Spider Lee, who does all of his sculpt concepts using clay. He doesn't use anything. All right, I'm gonna stop here though. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. You guys are awesome. You guys have done some great work. Oh yeah, there's 2 strains. I read about that too. Oh, ended on a good note. There's now 2 strains of COVID-19. Yeah, people are saying that only old people are being infected. They forget that viruses can evolve and mutate. So you don't contain a virus, it could change and become even crazier. This is why we can never ultimately defeat the flu. But anyway, regardless, you guys have been great. I really appreciate you guys and all the hard work you guys put into the class. I think this is fantastic. A lot of you guys done some really good work. I want you guys to keep that momentum up. Don't be strangers. The Skype chat will always be available for you guys to take a look at. When the file and stuff is all done and rendered, I'll send you guys the link and you guys can download it for your own leisure or just save it. Good suggestions like email yourself with a very descriptive title. So that way you can search it later if you forget. Like just mentorship AJ, and then you can get the link that way, That said, cheers, be safe, and please, please, please stay indoors until officials say it's a little bit safer to go out. And when I say officials, I mean the actual virologists. Okay. People that say it's time that we kind of go outside and test the limits of the virus again. Because that's most likely what's going to happen is when they say flattening the curve, it doesn't mean that we ultimately get rid of the case. It just means we spread out the amount of cases that happen in a longer stretch so that the hospitals can actually save people's lives. If it's an exponential situation, if we have all the cases all at once, as you guys can assume, we would be over capacity and a lot more people die. A lot more people will have lung disease and damage because the coronavirus doesn't just kill people, it like fucks your lungs up for life. So it's like, seriously, you don't even want to have it. Even if you survive it, it will fuck your whole life up. You'll have breathing problems. You might have asthma like right out of the gate moving forward, which is sucky deals. So be safe, guys. Keep drawing. Luckily for us artists, we don't need to be outside. we can be really productive without leaving. Anyway, cheers, guys. It's been an honor. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot,
very much
Anthony.
for your help.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.